But long before that, I was one of the people in the U.S. who started one of three of the top 4 computer publications in the world: PC World, PC Week, PC Magazine, and Digital Review, which maybe you've heard of. And at that time was very exciting because nobody knew what the business was about. Nobody really understood the technologies. But a lot of us were thrown in together in the same environment of vivid ferment, where we were all hanging out together, going to the same cocktail parties, going to the same conventions and trade shows, bumping into each other in the same airplanes. And because we were all thrown in together, talking to each other, we were able to learn a lot from the ambient setting of the industry. And from knowing these gentlemen, I know it's possible to do that right now. The only thing is, it's a lot harder right now than it was for me. I was in a journalistic environment of weekly deadlines, sometimes bi-weekly deadlines. And you're probably in the business of deadlines by the day or even by the minute, which makes it much more challenging for you to put stories in perspective and to understand the proper meta-narratives which will help your readers get a handle on what's really happening in the space. The panelists today, whom I spent the last several minutes with, are much smarter than I am on these topics, and so I'll let them largely introduce themselves and largely speak to their themes and their experiences and how these things can help you. But I can, before that happens, sort of share with you a few of the basics that we have in common just by spending 25 minutes together just now. We shared in common a concern for who the reader is, why he cares about this stuff, and also a concern for learning the basics of the industry we're reporting. What that does not mean is become a technological expert of any kind. What that means rather is being able to reach out into the information world and learn what you need to know to put any news release or any news event in the proper context. And this is not a technical expertise. This is simply learning about dynamics of companies and the ways of business. And that's something that you cannot get from the press release, but you can do it by having an inquiring mind. There are a couple of questions that can be asked of almost any company. Why you are in business? What's special about you? In fact, what's special about you is a difficult question at any time of an industry starting from the beginning, because often a lot of people in any business think they are special at the same time as they introduce a business plan. It's identical to many others. They still say that they're the only one doing it. We know that's not true. Also, we need to be asking what the company's value proposition is. And often this will be very different for the person who is the user of the product and the person who is the beneficiary of the product, especially with today's online-driven revenue schemes. And also it's important to remember that the sources you call, the most valuable ones will not be the ones who appear in the story. The most valuable sources will be the people who can give you general information on the company and the industry and the business dynamic. And often the people who are in the best position to do that are the ones who will not speak on the record. So you can simply say, that's okay. You don't need to talk on the record. I promise I'll keep it all to myself. I just want to learn and understand and become a smarter person. So these people can include customers, they can be industry consultants, they can be analysts, they can be competitors. In fact, they almost always should be competitors. You should always call competitors to get a reality fix on what your company is doing. All that said, I think that as I look at what's happening in the industry space you'll be covering, there are a couple larger stories that will sort of express themselves over time, meta-narratives, things that will be important about every story you do for the next couple of years. One of them is going to be the evolution of protection for intellectual property. In many, many Asian societies, we are benefiting from a lot of work that's been done in other places. And in many of the societies that our companies are in, protection of IP is the thing that's going to keep them in or out of business, is going to determine what the revenue model is, and is going to determine even if they succeed to do it in the first place. So, and as this is happening, the governments and legal apparatus of Indonesia is going to be evolving, and I read about it evolving right now in order to provide sufficient protections for innovators and for investors. Another meta-narrative to watch out for is the transparency of the investment environment. Usually, the more mature any economy becomes, the more that we as journalists and the more the general public can learn about what this company is and how they're financed, how much money they make and who makes it, and who their strategic partners are. Back in the day when companies were financed by friendly angel investors, all that stuff was hidden. But increasingly, as we rely upon publicly traded funds and upon the capital markets to invest in companies, this is the kind of information that you should know because it will tell you a lot about the direction the company's going. And also another thing that I personally will be watching carefully in a lot of Asian societies is the greater maturity of entrepreneurs' exit plans. Exit plans, which is to say, what an entrepreneur wants to do with a company when he starts it. Many of my favorite entrepreneurs had no idea what their exit plan was going to be when they started. However, I think in my country, in the U.S., this has, in my opinion, gone too far. And often entrepreneurs will not start a company until they already know how they want to get out of the company. Often one thing an investor requires of an entrepreneur is to have a way to bail out of the company so the investor gets his money back no matter what. And what that means is the investor is the one calling the shots in the operations of the company from the very first day it opens the store. I think that's gone too far. But we're going to be seeing an evolution in that direction in Indonesia and all over Asia, I think. So, without further ado, I'd like to ask Andy to begin talking about what it's like